The Wannacry ransomware attack is an ongoing worldwide cyber attack by the Wannacry Ransomware cryptoworm, which targets computers running the Microsoft Windows operating system by encrypting data and demanding ransom payments in the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. The attack started on Friday, the 12th of May 2017, and within a day was reported to have infected more than 230,000 computers in over 150 countries. Parts of Britain's National Health Service, NHS, Spain's Telefonica, FedEx and Deutsche Bahn were hit, along with many other countries and companies worldwide. Wannacry spreads across local networks and the internet to systems that have not been updated with recent security updates, to directly infect any exposed systems. A critical patch had been issued by Microsoft on the 14th of March 2017 to remove the underlying vulnerability for supported systems, nearly 2 months before the attack, but many organizations had not yet applied it. Those still running exposed older, unsupported operating systems such as Windows XP and Windows Server 2003, were initially at particular risk, but the day after the outbreak Microsoft took the unusual step of releasing updates for these operating systems too. Almost all victims are running newer Windows 7. Much of the attention and comment around the event was occasioned by the fact that the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, had discovered the vulnerability in the past, but instead of informing Microsoft had built the Eternal Blue exploit for their own offensive work. It was only when the existence of this was revealed by the shadow brokers that Microsoft became aware of the issue, and could produce a security update. Shortly after the attack began, a web security researcher who blogs as Cyberattack discovered an effective kill switch by registering a domain name he found in the code of the ransomware. This greatly slowed the spread of the infection, but new versions have since been detected that lack the kill switch. Wannacry malware Wannacry is the ransomware computer worm that targets computers running Microsoft Windows. Initially, the worm uses the Eternal Blue exploit to enter a computer, taking advantage of a vulnerability in Microsoft's implementation of the server message block (SMB) protocol. It installs Double Pulsar, a backdoor implant tool, which then transfers and runs the Wannacry ransomware package. Several organizations have released detailed technical write-ups of the malware, including Microsoft, Cisco, Malwarebytes, and McAfee. The payload works in the same fashion as most modern ransomware. It finds and encrypts a range of data files, then displays a ransom note informing the user and demanding a payment in Bitcoin. It is considered a network worm because it also includes a transport mechanism to automatically spread itself. This transport code scans for vulnerable systems, then uses the Eternal Blue exploit to gain access, and the Double Pulsar tool to install and execute a copy of itself. Kill switch. The software contained a URL that, when discovered and registered by a security researcher to track activity from infected machines, was found to act as a kill switch that shuts down the software, stopping the spread of the ransomware. He also noted that it was not an unprecedented technique, having been observed in the Necker's Trojan attribution. Although cybersecurity companies Kaspersky Lab and Symantec have both said the code has some similarities with that previously used by the Lazarus Group, believed to have carried out the cyber attack on Sony Pictures in 2014 and a Bangladesh bank heist in 2016, and linked to North Korea. This could also be either simple reuse of code by another group, or an attempt to shift blame, as in a cyber false flag operation. North Korea denies being responsible for the cyber attack. Eternal Blue The network infection vector, Eternal Blue, was released by the hacker group called the Shadow Brokers on the 14th of April 2017, along with other tools apparently leaked from Equation Group, which is widely believed to be part of the United States National Security Agency. Eternal Blue exploits vulnerability MS17010 in Microsoft's implementation of the server message block (SMB) protocol. This Windows vulnerability was not a zero-day flaw, but one for which Microsoft had released a critical advisory, along with a security patch to fix the vulnerability 2 months before, on the 14th of March 2017. According to Donna Sarkar, head of the Windows Insider program at Microsoft, Windows 10 was not affected. Double Pulsar Double Pulsar is a backdoor tool, also released by the Shadow Brokers on the 14th of April 2017. Starting from the 21st of April 2017, security researchers reported that computers with the Double Pulsar backdoor installed were in the tens of thousands. By the 25th of April, reports estimated the number of infected computers to be up to several hundred thousands, with numbers increasing exponentially every day. The Wannacry code can take advantage of any existing Double Pulsar infection, or installs it itself. Cyberattack On the 12th of May 2017, Wannacry began affecting computers worldwide, with evidence pointing to an initial infection in Asia at 7:44 a.m. UTC. The initial infection infection was likely through an exposed vulnerable SMB port, rather than email phishing as initially assumed. When executed, the malware first checks the kill switch domain name. If it is not found, then the ransomware encrypts the computer's data, then attempts to exploit the SMB vulnerability to spread out to random computers on the internet, and laterally to computers on the same network. As with other modern ransomware, the payload displays a message informing the user that files have been encrypted, and demands a payment of around $300 in Bitcoin within 3 days, or $600 within 7 days. Organizations that had not installed Microsoft's security update were affected by the attack. Those still running the older Windows XP were at particularly high risk because no security patches had been released since April 2014, with the exception of one emergency patch released in May 2014. However, the day after the outbreak, Microsoft released an emergency security patch for Windows XP. As of May 2017, less than 0.1% of the affected computers were running Windows XP. A Kaspersky Labs study reports that 98% of the affected computers were running Windows 7. According to Wired, affected systems will also have had the double pulsar backdoor installed. This will also need to be removed when systems are decrypted. 3 hard-coded Bitcoin addresses, or wallets, are used to receive the payments of victims. As with all such wallets, their transactions and balances are publicly accessible even though the wallet owners remain unknown. As of the 19th of May 2017, at 1200 UTC, a total of 291 payments totaling $92,879.51 had been transferred. Defensive response Several hours after the initial release of the ransomware on the 12th of May 2017, while trying to establish the size of the attack, Marcus Hutchins, a researcher who blogs under the handle @cyberattack, accidentally discovered what amounted to a kill switch hard-coded in the malware. Registering a domain name for a DNS sinkhole stopped the attack spreading as a worm, because the ransomware only encrypted the computer's files if it was unable to connect to that domain, which all computers infected with Wannacry before the website's registration had been unable to do. While this did not help already infected systems, it severely slowed the spread of the initial infection and gave time for defensive measures to be deployed worldwide, particularly in North America and Asia, which had not been attacked to the same extent as elsewhere. Microsoft released a statement recommending users install Update MS 17010 to protect themselves against the attack. In an unusual move, the company also made security patches available to the general public for several out-of-support versions of Windows, including Windows XP, Windows 8 and Windows Server 2003. On the 16th of May 2017, researchers from University College London and Boston University reported that their Paybreak system could defeat Wannacry and several other families of ransomware. On the 19th of May 2017, a group of French security researchers reported that they had found a way to unlock the program without paying the ransom under some circumstances. Within 4 days of the initial outbreak, security experts were saying that most organizations had applied updates, and that new infections had slowed to a trickle. Advice on ransom As of the 17th of May 2017, although many people paid the $600 ransom, there were no known cases of someone paying and being given the means to decrypt their data. According to Checkpoint Software Technologies, Wannacry doesn't seem to have a way of associating a payment to the person making it. It seems from Wannacry's code that decryption cannot occur without direct manual intervention by the hackers, and no communications sent to them have been answered. In light of these facts, experts strongly advise against paying the ransom. A flaw in the encryption used by the Wannacry malware has been used to create a tool called Wannacry which can, in some cases, decrypt a Wannacry-infected Windows XP PC's files. Gwinnett recommends users leave the computer untouched until they can run his program. This tool was later reused by other researchers for a new tool Wannacry that also works for Windows Server 2003 and Windows 7. Impact The ransomware campaign was unprecedented in scale according to Europol, which estimates that around 200,000 computers were infected across 150 countries. According to Kaspersky Lab, the 4 most affected countries were Russia, Ukraine, India and Taiwan. The attack affected many National Health Service hospitals in England and Scotland, and up to 70,000 devices, including computers, MRI scanners, blood storage refrigerators and theater equipment, may have been affected. On the 12th of May, some NHS services had to turn away non-critical emergencies, and some ambulances were diverted. In 2016, thousands of computers in 42 separate NHS trusts in England were reported to be still running running Windows XP. NHS hospitals in Wales and Northern Ireland were unaffected by the attack. Nissan Motor Manufacturing UK and Tyne and Wear, England, halted production after the ransomware infected some of their systems. Renault also stopped production at several sites in an attempt to stop the spread of the ransomware. Reactions A number of experts highlighted the NSA's non-disclosure of the underlying vulnerability, and their loss of control over the Eternal Blue attack tool that exploited it. Edward Snowden said that if the NSA had privately disclosed the flaw used to attack hospitals when they found it, not when they lost it, the attack may not have happened. British cybersecurity expert Graham Cluley also sees some culpability on the part of the U.S. intelligence services. According to him and others, they could have done something ages ago to get this problem fixed, and they didn't do it. He also said that despite obvious uses for such tools to spy on people of interest, they have a duty to protect their country's citizens. Others have also commented that this attack shows that the practice of intelligence agencies to stockpile exploits for offensive purposes rather than disclosing them for defensive purposes may be problematic. Microsoft President and Chief Legal Officer Brad Smith wrote, repeatedly, exploits in the hands of governments have leaked into the public domain and caused widespread damage. An equivalent scenario with conventional weapons would be the U.S. military having some of its Tomahawk missiles stolen. Russian President Vladimir Putin placed the responsibility of the attack on U.S. intelligence services for having created Eternal Blue. A cybersecurity researcher, working in loose collaboration with UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, researched the malware and discovered a kill switch. Later, a global loose-knit team of security researchers collaborated online to develop open-source tools that allow for decryption without payment under some circumstances. Snowden states that when NSA-enabled ransomware eats the internet, help comes from researchers, not spy agencies, and asks why this is the case. Other experts also used the publicity around the attack as a chance to reiterate the value and importance of having good, regular and secure backups, good cybersecurity including isolating critical systems, using appropriate software, and having the latest security patches installed. Adam Siegel, director of the Digital and Cyberspace Policy Program at the Council on Foreign Relations, stated that the patching and updating systems are broken, basically, in the private sector and in government agencies. In addition, Siegel said that government's apparent inability to secure vulnerabilities opens a lot of questions about backdoors and access to encryption that the government argues it needs from the private sector for security. Arndt Schönbohm, president of Germany's Federal Office for Information Security (BSI), stated that the current attacks show how vulnerable our digital society is. It's a wake-up call for companies to finally take IT security seriously. Gavin E. L. Hall, a doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham, has argued that an important debate should begin into the role of the government in cyber intrusions based on an educational starting point that a cyber intrusion will happen and you will lose data. Others found that hardware and software vendors often fail to account for future security flaws, selling systems that due to their technical design and market incentives eventually won't be able to properly receive and apply patches. Affected organizations The following is an alphabetical list of organizations confirmed to have been affected. See also Notes references external links Ransom, Win32, Wannacry at Microsoft Malware Protection Center, @actual_ransom, a Twitter bot tracking the ransom payments.